Team Triplus. Then we're going to start out with a 500-meter open swim. Then we'll come back into the dock. You'll get your rescue sled. All four athletes will have to keep their hand on it for 500, then a 2,000-meter run. And we have the leader swim caps this year.
Yeah, leader swim caps and leader jerseys like we've seen at the games the last couple of years. We're now transferring that to the team side. And then just some massive blue caps and no caps. Will make it very easy to identify these guys when they're swimming.
30 seconds.
So OC3 sitting in fourth, Balance currently in fifth place, Reebok CrossFit 1 and 6, and 4-1 7 and 7. They're trying to make a run, maybe get on the podium. Highly doubtful, barring something incredible, that anyone catches Mayhem Freedom. But you take a look at Back Bay in ninth and Pro 1 and 10th. Still some podium spots available in second and third. And we're underway in heat number 2. The Team Triplus at the 2018 Reebok CrossFit Games. They'll start it out with this 500-meter open swim. All four athletes must make it back to the landing to get the rescue sled.
I'll say this is the most dangerous part of this event, and I do mean dangerous in terms of actual possible injury. As you ever had a mass start, and you know, right off the bat, look at Tasia Persevich at the back part of the whole pack. She does not look comfortable in the water whatsoever, because you'd see the leaders in those red caps. So you know, we just touched on the importance of having a good team comfortable in the water. That does not look very comfortable to me once we stop swimming and start running again.
Well, Tasia started off on the swim, looked around, everyone else still running because it's shallow enough to move the feet. She'll make her way until it falls off.
I think we saw everybody do that in the first event. It's like everyone's swimming really hard, and then someone stands up like, oh, this isn't very deep? Okay, I'm going to run as long as I can because I don't like swimming. And, you know, we can kind of tell what, you know, they'll get back in the water once it starts to get deep enough. But the challenging part of a mass start like that, you know, if you have 20 teams, 80 people all in once, is that the chance of getting kicked in the face or elbowed in the ear or having your goggles ripped off. I've done a lot of open water events over my career as a swimmer in the past, is that it gets nasty in the water, especially when you got a lot of teams or people that are super competitive like these athletes are, is that, you know, that's one of the more dangerous things to look out for the start of the swim. Now, once they get into it, they have that 500-meter swim to start, 500-meter sled with the rescue sled, and that 2,000-meter run. The event is the first, third, and second third of this. If you got a good team in the water, you are going to have a great finish in this event. That last run is kind of an afterthought in terms of importance of an event like this. Same thing on the individual side. If you're a good swimmer and good paddle, you could coast almost on the run. It wasn't going to be an issue for it. These teams need to get out early, not just to have clear water in front, but to make sure you have clear room for your rescue sled on the second part.
So these teams will navigate a 500-meter swim to begin. That's where we are. We are just underway, about 2.5 minutes into the 40-minute time cap. Once the four athletes return to the dock, they get the rescue sled. They will then hold on to it, paddle 500 meters, then run 2,000 meters once they return back to the North Park Stadium. We saw the New Zealand and the Australian teams separate themselves early in heat number 1. Reebok CrossFit Frankston, the only Australian team right now in this heat from down under. So you could see things bunched up a little bit more once they get around the buoy than we saw in the opening heat. But they're coming now here to the first buoy to make that left turn.
I'll tell you what, leading the charge of this entire field is Rich Froning. I mean, talking about a guy who had some, I'm pretty sure it is, but has some troubles in the past in the water. You know, looking very comfortable leading this entire field of 80.
Or you remember the 1 year, was it 2014, they had the swimming pool.
Yes.
Swim with the muscle ups, and he really struggled in that one. But he is really, you talk about you've got to work on your weaknesses. He has come not just a long way. He's now looks like he's leading this heat, but again, a team event. And Tasia Persevich, remember, got on to that poor start.
And that's kind of the point I was going to make earlier, is that was that just a bad start for Tasia? And, you know, the benefit here is that there's only 2 girls wearing a red cap in this field. It's Lindy Barber and Tasia. Where is she in relation to the rest of this field? Does Rich even know that? You know, and like I said, is that you can be a great swimmer, and at that start, you get kicked in the face. That kind of changes your approach to the rest of this swim. And I don't know what happened at the start that had her so far and back, but to see Rich out here leading the field as impressive as it is that I'm almost a little worried is that, you know, maybe we left someone behind when they needed help at the very start of this event.
And that's a good point you talked about there about getting hit in the face or elbowed. We've seen it on plenty, and you've done the open swims, and we've seen it on plenty of the Fitness on Earth documentaries that they've done, recapping all the games and events, especially in the open swims, the ocean swims back when we were in SoCal, about how physical it is trying to get around the buoys.
I mean, the buoys pose a challenge in terms of, well, twofold. Finding the buoy is a challenge because it's early in the morning. Well, it's not early in the morning. It's almost midday, but, you know, we talked about the temperature of the water being an issue if you're used to a cooler environment. We're talking the chop of the water being a challenge if you're not comfortable. We're talking about not being able to look where you're going, but one part is kind of the sun reflecting off the water actually poses a very big issue when you're trying to sight your lines in terms of looking for the next buoy. Being about midday, it's not much of an issue. More that morning swim for the individual athletes would have been one.
The Rich Froning way out in front, but again, you've got to wait for all 4 athletes. And again, Tasia Persevich a little slow. She was 37th out of 40 in the ocean swim back in 2016.
You see the field really getting stretched out. Rich Froning leading it, but here's the issue. You see Lindy Barber, left part of your screen, and Tasia in the very back part of the pack doing that side stroke. In fact, a lot of athletes are doing kind of that combat side stroke. And, you know, to your point, is one thing in terms of individuals in past games, competitions, swim events. This wasn't a strong suit for her back then.
Her second appearance, she was an individual in 2016, brought into Cookville to join Team Mayhem and was placed on the Freedom team. One of 2 teams, Freedom and Independence, both here in this heat. Both in the top 10 with Freedom leading the way.
You see some of these athletes on the right side sitting up, treading water, looking for some of their teammates, and that's what you want to see, and hopefully that they've kind of planned for when you're talking about this team swim. Rich leading the field. I mean, that's a great swim stroke. He's been working on it. They have that access to water where they train all the time.
Well, working on his weaknesses is the thing that's made him the greatest of all time in the CrossFit Games. 4 individual titles, a pair of affiliate cup titles. Only athlete with more than 4 CrossFit Games titles, and looking to add number 7. And right now they are in a really good position to do it.
Right now on the leaderboard, maybe not right now in the 500-meter swim to do that.
The split for Tabaki to get all 4 members out of the open swim of the 500 meters was 8:03, and so we are less than a minute away from that 8:03, but that's all 4 athletes they had in. So we're going to see how this plays out. Tabaki finished first overall in the first heat at 33:26, Athletic at 35:08. Cape was at 35:20, Butcher's Lab 35:31, and Asana followed right up behind them. Asana came in at 36:21 overall. But again, we'll look for an 8:03 split if anyone gets all 4 team members to the dock, and I can tell you that's not going to happen right now.
No, it's not, but that 8:03 split for the team would have been the fastest 500-meter split for all the individuals. Now think about how good those guys were at this first part of the event.
The next split, Athletic, who was second in heat number 1, they got it at 9:47, and then Cape came in at 10:05. So just a few time markers to look at because those were your top 3 in heat number 1. So the 8:03 is already passed a long time ago, about 20 seconds ago. So we'll look at 9:47, at 10:05, at 10:39 if any of these teams are going to vie for maybe a top 5 in the overall event.
And just which teams have the collective group that are going to get out of the water first. And I said in the first heat, the strategy really should be is put your best swimmers not in the front of the pack, because you don't get an advantage coming out first without the other three. But put your best swimmers in front of your worst swimmers. You can help them. There is such an advantage on drafting in swimming, to the point is that you barely have to use much energy at all, unless they're just lightning years faster than you and they're going too fast for you to keep pace. But you can easily draft off someone in the water and make this a much, much easier challenge for a 500 than being on your own.
So coming up on that 9:47 split. And that would indicate where the second place team is overall, at least through one heat, and that was Athletic, again, who came in at 9:47. Then we'll watch for 10:05 as well. That's when Cape CrossFit got out of the swim, all 4 team members. So right now, it's Tamaki still maintaining an overall lead. They were already back in the water with all 4 members with the rescue sled.
As you can say, and I'm not saying it's set, but it's going to be pretty hard to imagine anyone making up 2 minutes on Tamaki after they crushed the sled and then had a nice run. And you're not going to make up 2 minutes on a 2,000-meter run, especially at the level these athletes are. Because if you just, you can run a 7-minute mile pace for 200 meters pretty casually, even at the end of this, if you're good swimmers. So you're going to force someone to run a 5-minute mile pace. So it's not going to happen in 2 minutes. And that's why I said on the individual side as well, as the swim is so important, because you can put so much time between you and other athletes who aren't good at it, easier than you would trying to make that up on a run, of which everyone can do well.
Let's see Rich Froning and Matt Hewitt there waiting for Lundy Barber and Tasia Persevich. See the red hats back on the right of your screen. Those are your leader swim capsters, Rich and Matt. The other athletes, you have to wait for all 4 team members to get there right off the ramp before you can go back and grab your rescue sled. Then once they get on the rescue sled, all 4 members have to hold it. And let's go ahead and talk about it. You can have one athlete on that sled, maybe. They put Tasia up there, get her to kind of paddle, kind of kick. We'll see how they play that.
And that's communication you need to have with you and your teammates in terms of, who's going to do what on what side and how hard we're going to pull at the start. Melbourne, a team that has success at the games in past years with swimming events. No surprise to see.
Melbourne, one of our international teams right now after 5 events, an international leaderboard. Pro 1 vying for top 10. They currently sit in 10th overall. Max Pols out of Norway in 14th. Frankston and Melbourne out of Australia are 15th and 17th overall. And Codigo out of Argentina 21st. But Pro 1, your top international team. And that's a team with a lot of history here at the CrossFit Games and in the regionals. No real surprise that Melbourne's out there with the rescue sled. Well, you have to have all 4 athletes touching this 55-pound sled that's 71 inches and 42 inches wide. And Chase, you called it in heat number 1. That sled, even though it's not going to go fast, needs to be moving through the water smooth. You can get a pair of athletes up front and back that are almost seemingly going 2 different directions.
Yeah, it's getting in sync with your stroke rate, your stroke tempo, how you're pulling. You're not just you're not supposed to be aimlessly just pulling yourself through the water. The athletes in the back need to be careful so that they're not pulling the sled back to gain an advantage on their stroke side. And what I mean by that is you see athletes that are holding onto a handle, and when they pull, they need to make sure they push forward with the opposite arm as they pull their sled back. You don't want to pull the sled back as you also pull, because this is taking it out of the position of your first 2 athletes.
Invictus X currently in second. You see them highlighted on your screen. That's how far they are behind Melbourne. But not real surprised that any of the teams from Invictus, at least the 2 Invictus teams based out of San Diego, would excel at this. CJ Martin has them do quite a bit of swim training. If you've seen their videos or followed their training. Now, Boston, a little bit different up in the Northeast, but the teams that are training over in San Diego should do quite well in the swim. Even though Sam, the dancer, is not native to the coast, they've been out there training.
And like I said, is that you don't have to be a good swimmer to be an effective swimmer in this format. And the confidence and comfortability in the open water setting by yourself on the 500-meter swim is one thing. Being able to control your breathing and work together as a unit when you're fatigued on this rescue sled is also very important. You'd be surprised at how many people panic in the water just because water's around their face. They don't think they can breathe. You know, and I always tell people, like, do you breathe when you take showers? Yes. Then you're fine. You're fine with water in your face. All right, so you got to be relaxed and be comfortable. But someone out there needs to be taking charge of the group in terms of who's pulling when, how hard they're doing it, because you can't just swim and just tug on that sled and think you're going to be moving together as one unit if someone is not in charge of that entire group.
So again, Melbourne and Invictus X, your top two. That's good for Invictus X. They're currently in third place overall with 358 points, and it's third overall in the standings and third in the heat right now. And OC3 is tied for fourth in the overall standings. They're at 358 points, but Invictus X has the tiebreaker for a potential podium spot right now. There's OC3, top 10 finish in every event so far. They got second place in event number one, and that's one of the teams. We saw them first under the team name Rollins back in 2015. Had an injury at regionals when, frankly, they were dominating Mayhem's first team under Rich Froning. Came in, made the games the next 2 years. This is their third year. They are really looking to make the jump. Their quote on their questionnaire, and it's great, if they're going to go for the podium, if they don't make it, and this is a quote, I want everyone to know this is their quote, not mine. Quote, they'll crack a few beers if they don't make it. They'll go for it next year because there's nothing else to do in Iowa. And that's the quote from OC3. You love their mentality. We're just going to train hard and go for it.
Hey, we've seen some pretty good athletes come out of that region. I mean, it's just a stacked region over in the Central East. OC3, one of those teams that does push Mayhem at the regional level, has yet to really put it all together at the games. Last year is one of their best finishes in terms of overall placing.
Last year we had a cut on Sunday, and the event prior to the cut line, they punched their way in to get a top 10.
Now we see a bit more of a, I wouldn't say they're bunched up, but a lot closer stretch of rescue sleds other than our three leaders in front. But that middle pack, that chasing pack, when we hit that turn and we have two of them, I'll be very surprised at what happens there in that group, because when you're in a straightaway that long, and I could guess it's about a little over 200 meters straightaway.
These are the last two athletes from the second place team overall, Don't Stop, who got the event win on the synchro worm last night. And it's kind of been what we thought. They had some issues in event one. They've done well since then, but really struggling here in the swimming event.
Well, and what they really needed is, if Mayhem is struggling in this event, I'm not sure exactly where they are in the large group, then they needed to capitalize on that, being in second place overall, 90 points out of first place. This is the last thing that they needed.
Well, if they're at the back of heat number two, there's danger you could get 0 points out of this thing. Let's take a look at how far they are behind the remainder of the field, especially Melbourne and Invictus X, who are at the bottom of your screen. That's a long way to go for Don't Stop.
And I'll tell you what that does is that's going to seal it, at least for their chance to not only take a first place finish, trying to challenge Mayhem here at the games, but maybe even a podium position. At the games is a lot different, because if you want to beat the best in the field, the Matt Frasers, the Tia Claires, the Mayhems, they are too consistent across the board to play the game of first and last. You can look good on a leaderboard doing that, maybe sit in the top 5, top 10. But if you want to be the best, which is what they came here to be, it's not going to work when you get anything outside that top 10, let alone the top 30 in events like this. They have a first and they have a second, but you can't offset it with 30-place finishes.
All right, Chase, we got a chance here for a pass on the buoy. Now, I know you've done open swims as an individual. They've got these sleds they've got to pull. Is there any comparison with running or any other racing to take a line here around the buoy?
Yeah, and what you want to do is it's kind of like what we saw in the crit race in cycling, is that the line isn't swim to the buoy and then take a right turn. A lot of these teams are actually way too far inside of the buoy. If you're looking at the buoy in the middle of your screen, look at that teams. They're all sweeping in to go around. You want to do quite the opposite. You want to sweep out and open up that curve a little bit more so you can keep your speed. The worst thing you can do is swim to the buoy, stop, turn your sled, and then keep swimming. Stopping your momentum is a big problem. So you want to see these athletes do exactly the opposite of what they're doing, is to swing out wide to the right and take a wider turn, and then you can keep your speed through those buoys.
19 minutes into the 40-minute time cap. If you, again, want to know how dominant East Tamaki was, they were finished with their rescue sled paddle at 23:39. That's coming up in about 4 minutes. And then they finished their run at about 9:47. So getting close to the halfway point of the 40-minute time cap. Again, there were only 9 teams at heat number 1. And that was a pretty good heat for an event like this that was able to finish in and under the cap.
So who is sitting in second place in this heat we're looking at? We looked at Invictus, OC3. Those teams currently sitting 3rd and 4th on the leaderboard, 100 points behind Mayhem. We're not really sure where Mayhem is. We know Don't Stop is dead last, so they're falling well out of that second place position. So the teams that need to be vying closer to Mayhem's score on the leaderboard are sitting where they need to be in this particular heat. Although we said before, Heat 1, they had the stud swimming teams in it, so they're not going to get first place finishes in here. And you see the leaderboard on the left part of your screen. Don't Stop, they're out. They're out of contention for this if they're going to finish in last. Now your next place team's tied 100 points behind Mayhem. Right now what we need to look at is where is Mayhem in this field of 20? Also, where are they relative to the first heat before this?
So you just how big the spread is there. The leaders, Melbourne, and they've already passed the last buoy. They're in the middle of your screen. That's how far ahead they are. And there's Don't Stop behind the pack. And they've actually flipped over to a backstroke. Rachel Garibay and Sheila Barton trying to switch things up. Jordan Cook, Travis Williams, the lead swimmers on the rescue sled. Looks like that's Rachel Garibay on the left trying to utilize the feet and the one arm. Past the halfway point. That's Garibay on the right, Barton on the left. Now Rachel Garibay is going to flip over and do the same thing.
I believe that's called toddler rescue swimming. They teach like 4-month-old babies, right? You put them face down in the water, and then babies can roll on their back and then just kind of move their arms so they don't drown. I've seen that before. I got a 6-month-old.
And there's Melbourne up top. And that's a pretty good lead. You mentioned it in the prior heat, in heat number 1. The sleds, yes, by appearance, visually, they look close. That is a long time gap when you're pulling the rescue sled.
And so as these teams are kind of getting bunched up before we get to the run, we start thinking about teams that have an impact on the leaderboard that are chasing Mayhem Freedom. 100 points sounds insurmountable, yet we're only at the halfway point of the weekend. That's the difference between getting a first place finish and a 15th place finish. There's 50 points. That is not out of the realm of possibility, depending on where Mayhem is. Now, if they get closer to 20th, that's only 5 more spots, but that's 10 more points. So depending on how OC3 and Invictus can keep pace with Melbourne and where they place in this event, it could be a big chunk of points lost. The issue we always seen with, if Mayhem ever has a bad event, it seems like the teams that are in first, second, 3rd, and 4th also have bad events, and they can never capitalize on those type of mistakes.
And what's an even bigger thing, Chase, is we're not totally sure what's in store tomorrow that Dave Castro has for the teams. We do not know yet how many points may be on the line for tomorrow, so you don't know if you still have maybe some time to make up tomorrow or if you don't have enough points to make up tomorrow. That's why it's called Moving Day on Saturday. We do know that there are going to be 3 more events. Today is listed, but we have no idea what's coming tomorrow.
So Mayhem is kind of in that secondary chase pack. So they're probably sitting about 10th in this heat, depending on, where their sleds sit with the rest of the field, which isn't as bad of a position as I thought they were going to be in based off how the swim was going for their 2 female athletes with Lindy Barber and Tasia Persevich. But, what has this swim and this sled taken out of those two, especially on Tasia's side, who was really laboring during the 500-meter swim. Because we know they have the capability to be good runners in the middle of an event. But towards the end with this 2,000-meter run, you know, this is when we see that run start to matter with those teams that are stuck in the middle of this event.
Chase, a little tough to identify the swimmers. I'm trying to see if that was, I don't believe that's Mayhem Independence off to the left, but not sure if they're together or not. I do not believe that's the Independence team. One of the females flipped over. I don't believe that's Ellie. We'll see if we can hunt down the Independence team. They are in 8th place overall in the standings with 312 points, and again, the Freedom team of 454 points in first place. But Melbourne will be the first team out of the water. We'll take a look and see where they're going to be. They're right now at about 24 and a half minutes. They'll be a little bit behind that, and the split on 24 and a half minutes would put them second coming out of the water. Athletic was second at 25:06. They'll be behind them, so we'll see when Melbourne can get out. Melbourne can get out before 26 minutes. That would put them third, right around Cape CrossFit, who got out at 26 flat. And they finished third in heat number 1. So they've got a minute to get in there to get that top 3. The top 5 time, the 5th place team in heat number 1. CrossFit Asana out of Spain was out of the water getting ready for the run at 26:36. As those were the two Mayhem teams side by side, Independence and Freedom. Here's Melbourne. They can already get into the shallow water and tiptoe their way up to the ramp. And in the distance, that's that secondary grouping that includes the two Mayhem teams, Independence and Freedom, as well as Invictus X and OC3. So once they get back to the ramp, they'll have to get their shoes on, get the rope, and then on their way.
Now we look at the distance between first and second place in this heat. We said in the previous heat is that distance, though it looks like, you know, that they're pretty close, the time it takes to move that far takes a lot longer than you would think when you're using this rescue sled.
About 26:14 was the time they got out of the water, which currently would put them 5th in this event at this split. So we'll see how it goes. Tabaki was at 33:26. And right now they'll try to beat Asana's time at 36:21. They were 5th place. So they're looking to get a top 5 realistically. They're not going to catch Tabaki or Athletic or even Cape for that matter.
I would have liked to see a bit more of a faster transition time. Look at they're sitting there tying their shoes and messing around. It's like before you get into these things, I mean, that's 10, 15 seconds of lost time. You know, they have about a 40-second advantage on the second place team from them getting out of the water. But, you know, those shoes should have been slightly tied already. You don't need socks. Just slip your feet and go. It's only 2,000-meter run. You know, you don't need perfectly tied shoes when it comes to this. So transitions when you're this close and tied up are very important.
Invictus X, the second team to make their way out of the water with the sled. They'll be on the run momentarily once they get the shoes.
See, and that's exactly what they even have, the rubber ties. Now that is a team that is prepared. They have those zip ties, and they just made up half of the time behind them. So they were 40 seconds behind when they got to the water. They made up 20 seconds on that transition alone.
So there goes Invictus X, and here comes the field. Here comes that secondary grouping that was well behind Melbourne and Invictus X. And there goes OC3 in this grouping. OC3, as long as they can keep this pace, Chase, should be punching their way into a podium spot right now. 4 events remaining today, and of course the entire day tomorrow. There goes Mayhem Freedom and Independence. They were side by side on the sled. They'll have to get the switch out. They came in around 9th or 10th. Let's see. Freedom came in at 10th. Independence came in at 9th. So the teams that have made their way to the dock: Melbourne, Invictus X, OC3 in that order. Then Torrance, Max Pulls, Reebok CrossFit 1, Queens, Pro 1, Independence and Freedom, and Seoul Miami are the 11 teams that are getting ready for the run or are already on the run, led by CrossFit Melbourne. CrossFit Balance now out of the water at 28:35. Melbourne takes a look back, and yes, we are that far ahead. We'll see if Invictus X, who wasn't terribly far, but I don't know if they're going to catch him on the run.
Well, on Tamaki's side, they had a 90-second lead going into the last part of the run. That's doable to make up, but you're really going to have to, put your nose down and just suffer if you want to try to make up that time in 2,000 meters. Right? It's a mile and a quarter. It's not terribly far in terms of distance to try to catch someone, but when you're only 20 to 30 seconds, that can easily be made up in a 2,000 meter run. So Tamaki's advantage is that they were, a quarter a mile ahead of the next closest team, and they were out of distance. What you just saw in the background is second place team within eye view, and that's going to change dramatically your kind of desire to run and try to catch the team. Tamaki didn't have to worry about it. They couldn't even get seen by the second place team in heat number 1. Melbourne is within eye shot of the second place team chasing them down.
CrossFit Melbourne right now is in first place in heat number 2. They're still trailing the time of Tamaki, but Melbourne in first place in the heat. They were the first CrossFit box ever in Australia. They finished second in the Pacific out of Caulfield, South in Australia. Here comes Invictus X. They are under the tunnel on that back straightaway.
With Melbourne leading in front, you can just see on the back right side of your screen Invictus X. We do have the arrow on him. If I can be honest, well, I'm going to be honest. I usually am. Invictus X isn't the team that has the athletes that are going to run down another team, right? With massive strength that you have with some athletes, you do make some sacrifices. Sam Dancer being on that team. We know Rethwell wants to drag his team faster. We saw him do it on the O course yesterday with that short 600-meter run. I don't know if Invictus has enough in the tank to chase down Melbourne, but they do need to make sure is that they're not letting up enough that it's going to entice those teams to run them down, because you're talking about some of the most competitive, fittest athletes on the face of the earth. Whether or not they're even good at the run won't matter towards the last half of maybe the 400, 800 meters left to go, because a lot of times when it comes to the team run, will trump fitness when it comes to the end.
Melbourne makes the turn. They keep peeking back because it's not just Invictus X now. You're starting to see a little bit more of the pack close the gap, as we saw OC3 in there. Torrance CrossFit, Max Pulse starting to close the gap on Invictus X. Invictus X's concern right now is to maintain second in the heat, not let a few more of those teams that were third and fourth coming out of the water catch them and take some potential points away.
We had two teams tied in the point standing for third place. We had another team just 10 points behind them on the leaderboards, and all those teams are in the mix with Melbourne at the moment with Invictus X, OC3. Balance is not in the mix. They're actually outside the top 15, but Reebok CrossFit 1 is kind of in that chase pack we saw along with Mayhem.
Melbourne on the far right. There's Invictus X coming in the center of your screen. As long as they maintain that pace, should have second in the heat. Here come a few more teams across the bridge. Here comes that grouping. Again, OC3 was third out of the water to get on the run, but it looks like you have about 5 teams in this secondary pack.
And the hard thing is trying to make passes when you have this very narrow pathway and you can only pass as a team, and there's a lot of communication, and passing on the left is Mayhem Freedom, that has moved from the outside top 10 to in this heat sitting in probably about 4th place overall.
Boy, the pace of this group is making up some ground on Invictus X, not so much on Melbourne. Because Melbourne making the turn in the grass. This will be their final stretch they get on the campus of the Alliant Energy Center. Time to beat just passed. So Tamaki is going to have 100 points and an event win, and everyone else will now trail in behind. Melbourne trying to grab a top 5, though.
I think next time's in line, you got to look at it's Athletic with 35.08, Cape CrossFit 35.20, and about 10 seconds behind them with Butcher's Lab. So those kind of 35 to mid 35s is the next time check for Melbourne if they want to get up in the top 3, top 5.
Top 3, Melbourne on the left side, middle of your screen, running through the grass. That is Invictus X. About to run onto the grass on the right side is OC3. OC3 just outside of the podium, but the way don't stop, and they were in dead last place getting onto that sled. OC3 should be moving their way onto a podium spot after this event.
Now Melbourne looks like they're in comfortable position. They're close enough to the finish line. Invictus X isn't going to chase them down, but Invictus needs to really start worrying about the teams running them down, with OC3 and Mayhem close enough to make a push with about 400 meters left to go.
Any team that can beat a 36:21 could have a top 5. That was Asana's time. Here's a look at that secondary pack. Melbourne won't be caught. Invictus X going to be tough to catch them. We'll see how that pack comes out with the Mayhem teams as well as OC3. And here they come into the Alliant Energy Center campus, and they'll be making their way into North Park Stadium in just a moment. Trying to lock up a top 5. And again, they need to beat 36:21 to get a top 5. They're about to fall behind the 4th place team. That was Butcher's Lab that finished in 35:31, but should have a top 5 here. Again, they should eclipse 36:21. Into the stadium. Here comes CrossFit Melbourne. And a nice round of applause from the crowd here at the North Park pad on the Alliant Energy Center campus. They'll make the turn all alone. That's always a nice feeling to come in.
Yeah.
Not have to sprint, enjoy your heat win. Last 20 feet, and CrossFit Melbourne is in. 36:04, and that will give them 5th overall. Here comes Invictus X, and a nice job by Invictus X. Should keep a podium spot. In fact, should be moving up into 2nd place overall in the standings.
A very nice job for Invictus X. I wasn't sure how they're going to handle the totality of that 2,000 meter run, but this is where it's going to start to get fun.
Here comes OC3. They'll make the turn. Don't think they'll be caught. About a 50-foot lead in the final 44 feet, and OC3 is going to come in and likely make their way into a podium position. Torrance CrossFit, a nice job by Torrance. Independence is in. Independence, a nice job. 10th in the event. So Melbourne gets 5th in the event. Invictus X a 7th place. OC3 a 9th. Independence a 10th. Max Pulse a 12th. Here in the event, not just the heat. Here comes Mayhem Freedom. They got out to a slow start on the initial swim, but we'll see where they finish overall. Maybe good enough for a top 20, and they had enough of a cushion. They'll finish 16th here in the Triplus. But your overall winner of event number 6, the team Triplus, is going to be East Tabaki. They'll have 100 points. Don't stop just getting out of the water from what we understand as well. So that's going to be devastating, not only obviously to have any chance to catch Mayhem Freedom, but maybe to podium.
Yeah, and I think, well, the hard part for Don't Stop is that they didn't come here to podium.
Right.
They came here to win. And so now you've got a dead last place finish, knowing full well you're completely out of contention for that. How do you approach the rest of the weekend is kind of the next question you pose to that team.
Less than 2 minutes remain on the 40-minute time cap as CrossFit Balance will come in. Balance has been bouncing around up near the top of the leaderboard from time to time this week. Here's Rob Forte, and his team as he went team this year after 7 years of being an individual. Reebok CrossFit Frankson, 38-34. So we got 13 teams that have beaten the time cap. We'll have a few more as we're just over a minute away until the time cap. 9 finished in the first heat of the team Triplus. Salt Lake City CrossFit Black in at 38-52. While Melbourne gets the heat win, they finished 5th overall unofficially in the event at 36-04. A lot of teams still out on the course here trying to make their way into the North Park Stadium. Less than a minute remains. Now the top 3 team members there are trying to drag that final male along, get him into the stadium. Hate to tell you, that's an all too familiar feeling to myself.
When you wish you were wearing roller skates.
That's Invictus Boston, who's now getting off the grass, and Invictus Boston, who had some Invictus back bay, and they're out of the Boston area, had some high hopes, sitting in 9th overall, but this may knock them out of the top 10. Here is the time cap, and so in heat number 2, 22 teams finished, but it's CrossFit Melbourne, the heat winner. They get 5th overall in the event at 36-04-79. So as we expected, Chase, here in the event, the international teams take the top 6 spots.
Yeah, and they take it in a big way. Look at Tamaki's time. Is 90 seconds was the closest team to them with CrossFit Athletic, who is a very dominant swim event team here at the CrossFit Games. This is the first time they've ever lost in 3 years in terms of the swim events. Second place finish, not too bad, but just the domination across the board, as you said, of the international teams here at the Games this year.
Tamaki is the winner. Let's take a look at how this event folded. And you said early on the swim is the event.
It was a rough start. You can see Tasia right there in the forward part of your screen. She was almost in the dead last of the pack, where Rich Froning was leading the pack the entire field. See, he's worked that weakness in a good way. But Melbourne, once you got to the water, the teams that got to the water first with the rescue sled not only ended up doing well, but they ended up dominating the rest of the field, having no one in your way, no issues around turns, and you can see that comfortability in the water. I think the only thing that they wasted time was, and it didn't really matter, was just tying their shoes and taking too long to do that. Comfortable, you can see the teams behind them kind of looming in the background, but it posed no issue for Melbourne. First place finish in the heat, good enough for top 5 overall in the event.
Join the cheers of the fans when they came in. CrossFit Melbourne 5th in the event, but they win heat number 2 of the team Triplus, and they are with Amanda Krenz.
Congratulations, you guys, on a heat win. When you saw that this event was announced, what was your reaction?
We're grateful we put a lot of time in the pool before coming out to the States, so it was going to be a fun one.
Obviously, going into an event like this, you have your strong swimmers, you have the swimmers who aren't as strong, but how do you pull it all together as a team to do that well?
Something like that, where we're all going to enter the water at the same time. It's just important to get out in front and get out of that chaos bunch. Yeah.
So this is moving day at the 2018 Reebok CrossFit Games. What do you guys hope to accomplish as a team moving forward throughout the rest of this competition, because there's a lot left?
We just want to put our best foot forward every event and just whatever we're capable of, finishing with that.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
CrossFit Melbourne again gets a heat win. They finish 5th in the event. East Tamaki gets 100 points as they win the event. They set a blistering pace in heat number 1. That does it for event number 6 for the teams. We'll switch back to individuals momentarily, but we'll be back with you a little bit later. More Affiliate Cup action for the 2018